You might think that pulling away is going to make him realize what he's lost, that your absence is going to stir something in him, that suddenly, by ignoring him, you're going to become more mysterious, more desirable, more worth chasing. But here's what we have to understand. Ignoring someone isn't the same as attracting them. It's just absence. And absence doesn't create value if value wasn't established in the first place. We've been taught this idea, right? That if you ignore him, he'll come running. That the moment you stop replying, the moment you don't make yourself available, he's going to be sitting there going, wait, where did she go? I miss her. I need her back. But let me ask you this. What exactly is he supposed to be missing? Because if the connection wasn't strong, if there was no emotional anchor, then your silence doesn't register as a loss. It just registers as nothing. You become a ghost in his life, not a gap. When someone is already invested, when someone already values you, then yes, your absence might spark something. It might create space for him to reflect, to think, to feel your value in a deeper way. But that only happens when something real was already there, when the connection was authentic, when he already felt the pull toward you. Ignoring someone who hasn't reached that point doesn't wake them up. It just makes you disappear. And that's the hard truth. So many people think that playing it cool, being distant, not texting back, these things will somehow elevate their value. But in reality, most of the time, what that behavior does is remove you from the frame entirely. It doesn't create curiosity. It doesn't stir longing. It just puts you out of sight and eventually out of mind. Here's another way to look at it. Imagine someone you met briefly, not someone you got to know deeply, just a surface level acquaintance. Now imagine they stopped texting you or responding altogether. Would you be heartbroken? Would you be dying to know why they disappeared? Probably not. You might not even notice, too, because they never made a meaningful impact to begin with. This is what happens when we rely on tactics like ignoring to create emotional weight. You can't create depth by stepping back. You create depth by being present, by connecting, by allowing someone to see you and feel seen by you. That's how emotional roots grow. That's how attraction becomes real. So when someone hasn't had the chance to connect with you in that way, your silence doesn't echo, it just fades. And let's be honest, sometimes the reason we resort to ignoring is because we're scared. We're afraid of being vulnerable. Afraid that if we lean in, if we show our interest, we'll be rejected or taken for granted. So we play it safe. We go silent. We tell ourselves, if I don't say anything, he'll come to me. But what we're really doing is avoiding the risk that comes with authenticity, because it is a risk to show up and be real, is a risk to say, hey, I like you, and not know what will come back. But that's where all the power is. That's where connection begins. Not in hiding, but in honesty. Now, does this mean you should chase someone who's not showing up for you? Absolutely not. There's a big difference between pursuing a connection and chasing someone who's indifferent. But the answer isn't to swing to the other extreme and just go cold, because if the only tool you have is withdrawal, you're not building anything. You're not moving forward. You're just hoping they'll do the emotional work you're unwilling to risk. The reality is, if a guy isn't already interested, you pulling back doesn't make him more interested. It just confirms that there's no connection worth fighting for. And if he was interested, but confused or unsure, disappearing only adds more confusion. It doesn't clarify, it doesn't inspire, it doesn't deepen anything. You want to be memorable? Be real, be present. Be the person who adds something to his world, not the person who quietly fades, hoping he'll chase a shadow. Show your value, and if it's not reciprocated, then walk away. But do it from a place of confidence, not strategy. Because the truth is, ignoring someone isn't a power move, it's often a fear move. And love, connection, intimacy, none of that is built on fear. It's built on courage, on truth, on showing up, even when it's uncomfortable. So if you've been ignoring him, waiting for the chase and nothing's happened, maybe it's not because you did something wrong. Maybe it's because there was never something real there to begin with. And maybe that's actually your answer. If he's not chasing you after you've ignored him, here's the real truth that stings a bit. He probably wasn't that invested in the first place. Now, I know that's hard to hear, especially when we've built this whole narrative in our heads. We think, well, maybe if I just pull back, maybe if I create space, he'll suddenly realize what he's missing and come running back. But let me tell you something. A man who is truly interested doesn't need you to disappear to realize your value. He already knows it. He's already aware of what he stands to lose, and that awareness drives his behavior. But if he doesn't chase you when you're gone, it's not because you're not amazing. It's because he never saw the depth of what you offered to begin with. Or worse, he did and still didn't care enough to pursue it. That's tough, right? Because we want to believe that everyone who shows us attention, even just a little spark, is secretly invested and just needs the right push. But real interest isn't passive. It's not half-hearted texts and fleeting flirtation. It's not breadcrumbing you just enough to keep you wondering. Genuine interest shows up. It makes effort. It doesn't need trick. And when a guy is truly invested, he doesn't want to leave your attention up to chance. You might have told yourself, I'll go quiet, I'll disappear, he'll wonder where I went. But if his emotional engagement was shallow to begin with, your absence is just silence. Not mystery, not intrigue, just nothing. You're imagining a story that doesn't match his level of involvement. Maybe he enjoyed your company, maybe the attention fed his ego, but the moment you step back, there's no real loss for him. Why? Because he never emotionally entered the connection. And you can't miss what you were never truly present for. Here's where we get stuck. We confuse someone's initial attraction for investment. Attraction is cheap. It's everywhere. A look, a smile, a flirty message. Those things are easy to give. But investment, that's when someone shows up consistently. That's when they care about your world, your mind, your needs, your standards. That's when they don't want to risk losing you. So if you remove yourself and he doesn't react, that silence isn't strategy, it's data, it's feedback, it's clarity you didn't want, but clarity you need. Now, I'm not saying you're wrong for pulling back. Sometimes that's the healthiest thing you can do. But what I am saying is don't sit there waiting for the chase to begin if it never mattered enough to him in the first place. That's not empowerment. That's emotional purgatory. That's sitting in the in-between of what you hoped he felt and what he actually feels. And often, those two things are not the same. Let's be honest. Some guys are just in it for the moment, not for the meaning, not for the connection, not for the future. And if you think that your silence is going to turn a guy like that into someone who suddenly wakes up and realizes he loves you, you're not giving yourself enough credit. You're banking on someone else's growth to validate your worth. But your worth isn't proven by his pursuit. It's proven by your ability to walk away and not look back when that pursuit never shows up. Because here's the reality. The man who sees your value doesn't need you to vanish to feel it. He doesn't need to lose access to you before realizing you're rare. That man, he shows you now. He moves toward you because he wants to, not because you've manipulated the situation. And if he doesn't do that, that silence is your answer. And please stop measuring your value based on how much someone misses you after you're gone. Start measuring it by how deeply someone sees you while you're still there. If he couldn't recognize your presence, don't romanticize his response to your absence. So if you're sitting there wondering why he's not chasing you after you've pulled back, maybe it's time to stop asking, why isn't he chasing me? And start asking, why did I ever want someone I had to disappear to be noticed by? You deserve to be chosen loudly, not quietly forgotten. You're playing a game, but he's just living his life. That's the hard truth most people don't want to hear. There's this idea out there, one I know is incredibly tempting to believe, that if you just pull away, if you stop texting, stop showing interest, stop engaging, somehow that will magically pull him in. That ignoring a man will create a sense of urgency in him, that he'll suddenly wake up and chase you. And sometimes that can happen, but only if there was something real there to begin with. Here's what we have to understand. If a man was genuinely interested, genuinely captivated, and emotionally invested, your absence might make him take notice. But if he wasn't all that invested in the first place, your silence doesn't feel like a loss to him. It just feels like space. That's all it is. You go quiet and he gets quieter. Not because he's playing harder to get than you, but because he's not playing at all. He's just moving on with his life. We've been fed this illusion that every man wants the chase. But let's be honest, the chase only exists when there's genuine attraction, curiosity, and emotional engagement. If those ingredients aren't already in the mix, no amount of silence is going to magically stir up desire. You can't manufacture urgency in someone who wasn't emotionally committed from the beginning. And this is where the real trap happens. You think you're being mysterious. You think you're creating value through scarcity. But in reality, what you're doing is trying to manipulate the emotional outcome, trying to shortcut vulnerability. Instead of saying, here I am, and this is what I want, you're hoping that your absence will do all the talking for you. But what if he's not even listening? See, he's not analyzing your silence the way you think he is. He's not pacing the room, wondering why you haven't messaged. More often than not, he just assumes you've lost interest or that you were never that serious to begin with. And instead of leaning in, he leans out. While you're sitting there hoping your silence is echoing in his mind, he's out there texting someone else who's showing up, someone who's being real, expressive, emotionally available. That's the difference. When you play games, you attract people who are looking to play games. And when you use tactics to try and provoke a reaction, you might win short-term attention, but you rarely build anything sustainable. The kind of man who is worth your time, the one who's emotionally mature, confident, and ready for something real, isn't sitting there waiting to decode your mixed signals. He's attracted to clarity. He's drawn to authenticity. And he appreciates someone who knows what she wants and isn't afraid to express it. Now let's take a moment and flip the roles for a second. Imagine a guy likes you, and instead of being warm or honest, he starts ignoring you on purpose, hoping that you'll suddenly start chasing him. How does that feel? A bit manipulative, right? A little insecure? Because it is. And yet, this is the very thing so many people are advised to do in dating. Just pull back. Act like you don't care. Make him miss you. But what kind of relationship are we actually setting up when we do this? One where no one talks, no one leads, no one owns how they feel. One where we're constantly trying to outmaneuver each other emotionally instead of just being real. And let me tell you, the longer you live in that dynamic, the more emotionally exhausting dating becomes. Because now you're no longer building a connection, you're playing psychological chess. And eventually that wears you down. Look, I get it. We've all been there. You like someone, they start pulling away. And your instinct is to match their energy or disappear entirely, hoping it sparks something in them. But the truth is, if disappearing is the only way you can feel powerful, then that's not real confidence. That's fear dressed up as strength. You want power? You want the real upper hand? It's not in ignoring someone. It's in knowing that you don't need to. It's in showing up, being honest about how you feel, expressing your interest, and still being ready to walk away if it's not reciprocated. That's strength. That's value. That's confidence. Because at the end of the day, the person who's secure in themselves doesn't need to create distance to feel desired. They create connection and see who steps into it. If he steps up, great. If he doesn't, also great, because now you know you don't have to wonder. You don't have to second guess yourself. You move forward clear-headed, knowing that you didn't shrink, you didn't manipulate, and you didn't waste your time playing a game that he was never even playing. And that's the truth no one wants to admit. Sometimes he's not chasing because he's not thinking about you. Not because you're not worthy, not because you're not beautiful or amazing, but because you're investing your energy into someone who never showed up emotionally in the first place. So stop thinking that silence is your most powerful move. It's not. Presence is. Being real is. Saying what you want and standing behind it. That's where your value lives. Don't try to spark a chase from someone who's not even standing still long enough to notice you're gone. If he's not coming towards you, it's not because you did too much. So many people think that if they just disappear, if they suddenly go cold, if they play it cool and give someone nothing, that person will suddenly wake up and realize, oh my God, I'm losing them. I need to chase them. I need to win them back. And listen, I get the logic. We've all heard things like absence makes the heart grow fonder, or people want what they can't have. But let's be honest, most of the time, that isn't how it plays out. Because here's the truth. Ignoring someone doesn't automatically make you more valuable in their eyes. It just makes you invisible. See, people confuse ignoring someone with showing self-respect, but they're not the same. Ignoring someone is a passive move. It doesn't say, I have standards. It just says, I've gone silent. And in a world where everyone's already distracted, where people are flooded with attention from all sides, silence doesn't always read as strength. Sometimes it just reads as disinterest. Or worse, it confirms what they already suspected. You weren't that into them, and that's okay. Now, I'm not saying you should be overly available or chasing someone who gives you nothing. That's the other extreme, and we don't do that either. What I'm saying is that your value isn't communicated by retreating into the shadows and hoping someone notices the void. Your value is shown through presence, through connection, through the way you express your standards while still being open. Think about the people in your life who made an impact, the ones you still think about. They didn't play mind games. They were real. They brought something into your life: energy, honesty, confidence, humor, depth. You felt something when you were around them. That's what creates value. When a man doesn't chase you after you've ignored him, it's often because he never got that feeling from you in the first place. You might think, but I was there, I gave him my time, I showed interest, sure, but did you connect with him in a way that made him want to keep investing? Or did you hold back, play it cool, keep your cards too close, and then vanish, expecting that your absence would create desire? Real high-value behavior isn't about removing yourself and seeing who notices. It's about being able to show up confidently, express interest when it's genuine, and still be strong enough to walk away if you're not met with the same energy. That's powerful. People remember the ones who made them feel seen, the ones who communicate with clarity, not the ones who ghosted and left them guessing. This idea that if you act aloof enough, someone will suddenly chase you, that's fantasy. It's based on fear. It's rooted in the idea that you have to manipulate desire instead of just creating it through authenticity. And let me say this, men don't chase a woman just because she pulled away. They chase the woman who left something behind, a memory, a connection, a feeling of, I don't want to lose that. And you don't create that by ignoring someone. You create it by being real with someone. Now, there is a moment when walking away has power. And that's when you've shown up fully, been open, brought the best of yourself to the table, and still weren't met halfway. In that case, walking away isn't a game, it's a boundary. But again, that's very different from ignoring someone before anything meaningful was established and then expecting a grand chase to begin. You're not trying to be the mystery that no one understands. You're trying to be the person who knows their worth and expresses it without fear. Because when you do that, when you lead with courage instead of ego, you attract people who value clarity, who value connection, and who are ready to show up. So stop thinking silence is your power move. Your real power is your ability to connect deeply, stand firm in your standards, and choose someone who chooses you back, not someone you have to trick into noticing you. Because ignoring someone might get their attention for a second, but confidence, clarity, and emotional presence, that's what keeps it. Choose the connection, not the game. If he's avoidant, your silence doesn't trigger pursuit. It just gives him the exact space he's already comfortable with. And this is where so many people get it wrong. They think, if I ignore him, he'll miss me. If I go quiet, he'll realize what he's losing. But when you're dealing with someone who has an avoidant attachment style or who's simply emotionally unavailable, pulling back doesn't make them come running. It often does the opposite. It validates their worldview that closeness is risky and space feels safer. Let's really think about this. You stop texting, you stop initiating, you even ignore a message or two, hoping that he'll notice your absence and start to chase. But to a man who is already wired to withdraw when things get too emotional or intimate, your silence is not a red flag, it's a green light to continue as he was in his mind. It's confirmation. See, I knew she wasn't really that into me. I knew I was right to not get too close. It reinforces his belief that vulnerability leads to rejection or complication, and you fading into the background feels almost convenient to him. And I know that stings, because the intention wasn't to disappear forever. The intention was to shake him up a bit, to get him to wake up and realize, wait, she's not around like she used to be. I need to do something. But people who fear intimacy don't respond to distance with desire. They respond to distance with more distance. They don't chase, they retreat. And suddenly you're stuck in this loop where your silence meets his silence and the whole thing just fizzles into nothing. Now, this isn't to say you should be the one always reaching out, always putting in the effort. But we have to stop pretending that ignoring someone is a high-value move when it's just another form of avoidance. Because sometimes what looks like confidence is actually fear in disguise. If I don't message, I won't get rejected. If I stay silent, I maintain control. But real connection isn't built on silence. It's built on presence, on clarity, on honest interaction. With avoidant men, the game is different. You're not dealing with someone who needs a little nudge to remember your worth. You're dealing with someone who is actively protecting themselves from closeness. So your pullback doesn't feel like a mystery to solve. It feels like relief. And that's a brutal truth to accept, because we want to believe that we're unforgettable, that our absence will leave this undeniable mark that pulls them back to us. But the kind of person who is emotionally unavailable will rationalize your absence as another reason to stay guarded. And here's where your power comes in. Not in ignoring, not in pretending to be cold or indifferent, but in being honest with what you want and not settling for crumbs. If someone is emotionally avoidant and your emotional needs are being left unmet, your job isn't to outmaneuver them with tactics. Your job is to recognize the pattern and say, this dynamic doesn't serve me. You deserve to be in a connection where effort is mutual, where your presence is valued and reciprocated, not one where you have to go silent just to be noticed. If you find yourself constantly hoping that your absence will spark his attention, ask yourself, what kind of relationship am I really hoping to build here? One where you constantly have to disappear in order to be seen, or one where you can show up fully and be met with someone who actually wants to meet you there. The truth is, when you find the right kind of man, the one who's emotionally available, secure, and genuinely interested, you won't need to disappear to get his attention. You won't have to perform silence or distance as some kind of strategy. He'll notice your presence because it matters to him. He'll reach out because he wants to. He won't need to be tricked into pursuing you. And that's what you should be aiming for. Not someone who finally starts to care after you pull away, but someone who's consistent, who values you while you're still in the room. Someone who sees you not because you left, but because you showed up and you were worth seeing. So if you've been pulling away and waiting for the chase that never comes, maybe it's time to stop asking, why hasn't he noticed I'm gone? And start asking, why did I need to disappear in the first place? You're not here to be the exception to someone's avoidance. You're here to be the standard. You might think that confidence means saying nothing, that if you just pull away, stay silent, don't reach out first, he'll suddenly wake up, realize what he's lost, and chase after you like it's a movie. But that's not confidence. That's hoping silence will do the talking for you. And real confidence doesn't come from waiting. It comes from doing. Here's what most people don't realize. Confidence is not about withholding. It's not about playing hard to get to manipulate someone's attention. It's about being clear on your value and being unafraid to express it. A lot of women think, if I ignore him long enough, maybe he'll realize how much he misses me. But what that often turns into is just a long period of nothing happening. You sit in silence, watching your phone, wondering if your withdrawal is doing anything, while he's out there living his life completely unaffected by the absence. And then what happens? You start to feel like the power is slipping away from you because you realize your inaction didn't make a difference. He didn't chase, he didn't come back, and now you feel stuck. Do you keep ignoring? Do you break the silence and message him? Or do you just walk away entirely? None of those choices feel strong when they come from a place of insecurity. Confidence is not silence. Confidence is action. It's the ability to express your interest without fear of losing your dignity. It's saying, I'm interested in you and I'm not ashamed of that, but I won't sit here waiting around if it's not mutual. That's power, because most people are either too afraid to show they care, or they care so much they abandon all their standards. The most attractive energy in the world is someone who can say, I like you, but I don't need you. That energy doesn't come from ignoring someone. It comes from knowing that whether they respond or not doesn't determine your worth. It comes from being able to say how you feel without making it someone else's responsibility to validate you. If a guy isn't chasing you after you've ignored him, it might be because he's not interested. But more often than not, it's because you're not giving him anything real to respond to. And that's what ignoring does. It creates a void. And in that void, he fills in the blanks however he wants. Maybe he thinks you're not interested. Maybe he assumes you're talking to someone else. Or maybe he just takes the silence as a sign that this isn't going anywhere. And he moves on. Not because he's a bad guy, not because he's playing games, but because you've given him no reason to believe anything is still alive between you. People need something to engage with. They need a spark, a sign, a moment of connection. And you don't create that by being absent. You create that by being present, even if only briefly, and showing that you have the courage to express yourself. It's so common to hear, if he really wanted me, he would come find me. But let's flip that. What if he's sitting there thinking, if she was really interested, he have disappeared? We always assume the other person holds the key, that they're supposed to make the next move. But what if you were the key? What if your boldness, your clarity, your energy was the thing that could have made the difference? Now, I'm not saying chase him. I'm not saying lower your standards or pour yourself into someone who isn't reciprocating. What I am saying is, don't confuse games for confidence. Don't confuse silence for self-worth. The most magnetic people in the world aren't the ones who sit back and wait. They're the ones who walk into the room emotionally, mentally, physically, and own the space they take up. If you want to build real attraction, stop thinking that ignoring him is the secret weapon. It's not. Attraction is built in shared moments, in vulnerability, in conversations, in energy that says, I know what I bring to the table and I'm not afraid to show up with it. If he doesn't respond to that, then he's simply not your person, but at least you'll walk away knowing you acted from strength, not strategy. So the next time you're tempted to play it cool, to disappear and wait for him to chase, ask yourself, am I doing this because it's truly what I want, or because I'm afraid to show how I feel? Because I promise you, the real power isn't in pretending not to care. It's in caring and still having the strength to walk away if it's not returned. Because confidence isn't built in silence. It's built in the courage to take action and the grace to let go when it's not right.